about it, but there's some lovely work called time use research. And what it does is it's very expensive to do, but it tracks everyday life across time. So that, for instance, if it's you and me, we measure, we write down everything we do from the moment we get up to the moment we go to bed in kind of 15-minute segments. So people, it's very easy to write down everything from, from like, I got up, made a cup of tea, to solve, an amazingly complicated equation, and then saved the world, and then at 5 o'clock had a cup of tea, and da-da-da-da-da. So it's quite promiscuous in the way that it collects data. And what this data does is enables people to analyse what people do in all of these segments of the day and who they do it with. And that's the research that has yielded this evidence. And the reason that it's so challenging is because we all have a wish and a kind of belief that men do more than they ever did with their kids. And we're on a kind of long, slow trek towards a kind of convergence between the genders. Now, what the research has showed is that things have indeed changed, but that process of change has stalled and virtually stopped. And this is where capitalism comes in. Because as we know, in Britain, British politics and British corporate life has been absolutely intransigent in its refusal to encounter the possibility that we can reduce waged working time so that men and women both have more time to engage with their domestic lives and with each other. So, for example, in Britain, young fathers, who are needed most actually as fathers, work the longest hours in Europe. Young fathers have the most etiolated relationship to domestic life when they're most needed. And that's because every government since 1979 has supported British business and British business's intransigence about reducing working time, waged working time. The Labour government did it because it was a friend of business, and it's completely disastrous. And what that means, of course, is that in order for daily life to be livable, you get a polarisation between waged workers' time, brackets, men's time, and mothers' time. The British labour market is characterised by a cleavage between full-time work and mothers who are part-time. The numbers of men who will become part-time will increase now because of the nature of our economic crisis, but it's largely to do with parenting. So that's why this research on time is really important, because it tells us the truth beyond our fantasies about what we imagine. And this is why I think the system that we now live in can be described as a kind of neo-patriarchal economy. There's a presumption that yes, men and women will be equal. Yes, women can be astronauts if they want to be. But there's also a presumption that once there are babies, that work is done by mothers. And capital has been unyielding. It doesn't fund it, it doesn't sponsor it, it doesn't create nursery provision. It's been mean and intransigent. And that's what produces the difficulty for us. What we've never had, in Britain, we've never had a movement amongst men to campaign for an increase in child benefit and an increase in men's time off. All of those movements have been sponsored by women. And what we need is men just to bloody join in, I said with a tone of exasperation. One final thing.